today. We're also going to talk in this hour about developments, potentially, we don't know in the Ramsey case, but a couple of interesting guests on that. Seems odd to say that, brother, doesn't it, in the Ramsey case. It's so frustrating for so many of us, but another wrinkle.
Just think about it. Thank you to my law partner, David Olivas. He brings me the Boulder Daily Camera, and there's a half-page ad, which isn't cheap, comparing the handwriting of this guy, Chris Wolf, who the Ramsey said is a good suspect, who the late Lou Smith said was a good suspect, and now his ex-girlfriend says here's his style of penmanship taken out of his journal. And on the surface, it looks pretty similar, but the Boulder police say nothing to look at here. He couldn't possibly be the guy. We investigated it, and who in their right mind would think that the Boulder law enforcement could have made a mistake on JonBenet? So Stan Garnett is going to talk to us. Stan Garnett, the new Boulder DA, and I had my problems with Alex Hunter, and boy, I have issues with Mary Lacey. But they're not the DA up there anymore. Stan Garnett is. He's competent. Of course, he's running for Attorney General as well. This Thomas Grogan, he is a handwriting expert, and he's going to tell us his conclusion that Chris Wolf authored that ransom note. Dan, when you think about it, even today, this many years later, and that poor girl was killed on Christmas 1996. So what are we, almost 15 years away? If somebody got arrested, like a Chris Wolf or JonBenet slaying, that would be the biggest story in America. Right away, again, everybody would get back into it, and everybody wants to know for sure who killed JonBenet Ramsey. So I think it would just start up all over again. But first, there would have to be an arrest.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's it's just amazing to think. I mean, we have kids who are in high school now who weren't even born at the time she was killed, and yet it's still that fresh and intense and meaningful to so many people. You're absolutely right, and of course that goes back to a separate series of questions as to why. Why such a deep, intense connection to that case, interest in it, et cetera. We've had some very, I think, interesting conversations about that in the past. Would there have been the interest if JonBenet was fill in the blank or wasn't fill in the blank, beautiful from a wealthy family, et cetera? So, yeah, it's just amazing, phenomenon, the grip it's had, not only in this community, but the interest you refer to would be there across America. So
the world,
well,
the whole world.
That's right, exactly. And Dan and Craig, 630 KHOW. Let's go to the VIP line. Welcome Boulder DA Stan Garnett to the show, also running for Attorney General in the state of Colorado. Stan, welcome back to 630 KHOW.
Hi, Dan. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. We very much appreciate your time. And, of course, wanted to start with this story of the ad being placed in the Boulder paper, the claim, and we're going to have this Thomas Grogan, President and Chief Examiner, Forensic Document Laboratory, coming up, claiming that they've identified the author of the ransom note, and just wanted to get your take on that.
Well, Dan, one of the first things I did when I took over the DA's office was to give the Ramsey case that I'd inherited back to the Boulder Police Department. Boulder Police Department has a major crimes unit that they've developed over the last 10 years. It's really excellent, and they've done a great job of investigating the case. I get personally in my office probably about 2 tips a week on the Ramsey case. I send them all to the police department. They're investigated and move forward. They've investigated this one. I'm assured that there's nothing to it. But obviously, anybody that has information about the case, we're happy to get it, and we'll make sure that it gets followed up.
And that handwriting comparison up on KHOW.com, Caplis and Silverman page, and we're loading up.
Dan, good to talk to you. Let me, first of all, I think it works better if the police department investigates murders, but this has been such a controversial case. I know you trust the Boulder police, but is it trust but verify? I mean, did you read this ad? Because on the surface, obviously, there are some similarities. Now, you can do a lot with photoshopping or whatever you want to create, but did it catch your eye?
Well, we actually had the information presented to us a few months ago directly to the office and then directly to the police department. So I am familiar with the information, and I both read the ad and had my wife read it to me yesterday when we were reading the paper.
Yeah, interesting. Here's what it says in the Boulder Daily Camera. The note on the right is recreation of the original ransom note found at the Ramsey's residence on December 26, 1996. The recreated document was compiled from the journal entries of an individual who we believe should be further investigated for the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. Handwriting expert Thomas Grogan of Forensic Document Laboratory, Inc. analyzed these two documents and confirmed in a court-ready report that these were in fact created by the same hand. Ultimately, we would like to see the case reopened, new evidence reviewed, and the killer brought to justice. Do you know about this lab or Thomas Grogan?
Sure. Well, and let me stress, it's important for the public to know the case has never been closed. The case is very open. It's got very active investigations ongoing, and all information that we receive. I, in fact, get a letter from a guy a couple times a month who's in prison someplace who tells me he solved the case, and he'll tell me the solution if we wire $1,000 to his prison account. All those tips we get, including this, are reviewed and sent to the police. They work with CBI, and we look at everything very, very closely.
Well, let me ask your attitude, because you grew up with me in the Denver DA's office, and I remember when handwriting was a pretty significant clue. In fact, lay witnesses could look at handwriting and say, yeah, that's my wife's handwriting or my child's or anybody you were familiar with it. Now we have Shrek tests, which is a fancy word for all these expert testimonies aren't necessarily reliable. But what's your attitude, Stan? Is handwriting an important tool in courtroom work?
Of course, handwriting is an important tool. It has been somewhat discredited in recent court decisions. But the thing people need to understand about the Ramsey case is it's a very complex case. And it's a case that for charges ever to be filed, we're going to have a number of issues line up very clearly to where we can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Handwriting may be part of that. It may not be part of that. And again, as we explained to these folks when they first presented the information to my office and then to the police, we want to receive tips from anybody who thinks they know anything about this case, because we'd love to solve it. We'd love to proceed and get a conviction like we did last June in the Susanna Chase case. But merely giving a tip to my office or to the Boulder police doesn't give a member of the public the opportunity to know the inside of what's happening on an investigation. The investigation is open and things are being pursued. Yeah.
Stan Garnett, our special guest on KHOW. Stan, have you ruled the Ramseys out?
I'm not going to comment on that, Dan.
Well, are you still considering information that might point to one or both of the Ramseys?
Well, the investigation is being handled by the Boulder police. All information that is referred to us will be carefully reviewed by the Boulder police. And the evidence, as I said, when we gave the police the case back, as with every case, we will follow the evidence wherever it leads.
Well, and Stan, with all due respect, when the Boulder District Attorney comes on the show and says he won't comment on whether he's ruled the Ramseys out, doesn't that work directly against the message you sent a minute ago, which was if people have tips, they should send them to us? Now, your predecessor, and I understand you are not your predecessor, which is why I posed the question to you, but your predecessor said she had officially cleared the Ramseys, at which point there wouldn't be any sense in anybody forwarding information to the Boulder DA's office that might implicate a Ramsey. But I think it's a fair question as to whether the new DA has a different approach to the case. Should people bother sending that information to your office if they think it's information that would incriminate a Ramsey?
Well, I certainly have a different approach to the case because, as I mentioned, the first thing I did was to give the case to the police, who are the experts in this investigation and doing a great job with it. And here's what I'll say again, as we did when we gave the case back. Anybody who thinks they have any information about any aspect of this case should provide it to the Boulder police, and it will be followed up. And the evidence will lead where it leads if it ever develops to a point where we have a working theory for prosecution.
Hey, Stan, I don't know why it is. We've debated it on the radio, but this is a matter of worldwide attention. I'm sure you know that. Does the public, and I think a lot of people just feel terrible that a little girl was murdered in her home on Christmas in Boulder.
Oh, yeah, it's a horrible case.
Right. So when I see that somebody named Jacqueline Brungart bought a half-page ad in the Boulder Daily Camera and went to the expense of hiring an expert, and she used to be the girlfriend of the suspect, Chris Wolf, what can you tell me about Jacqueline Brungart?